Hi, class. I'm going over chapter 5, interviewing, and I will briefly go through the parts we already discussed in class, just reviewing them. And then, of course, toward the end of the video will be the part where we left off whenever we were discussing the project. I will also include some information about your project at the end of the video. So, whenever you're conducting an interview, whether you are talking to someone about a job or if you're asking a client some questions about what's going on, you're filling in gaps in information. Now, whenever we get into media writing, we are also doing other things like more journalistic style writing, where you're adding a face to the facts. Even when you're writing for social media, you want to find a way to personalize a story and make it something that your audience can connect with. And you also want to have a either an audio or video interview to help you develop that kind of spidey sense whenever you're talking to someone. And what that means is listening to their answers, observing what they're doing, and seeing where there might be room for some additional questions, some things that maybe didn't come up during your research process, but are now coming up whenever you're conducting the interview. And you also want to make sure that you're providing balanced coverage. So that means when you're covering a topic, don't just look for an official stance on something or an unofficial one. Look for both. Also, look for all of the different people involved and see which ones can add some more information that's important to your audience and is important to your story and its development. Now, whenever you're talking to people every day, of course, we do have some kind of everyday interviews, like whenever you are asked, how's your day going? Or whenever you are in a job interview, you are asking the person interviewing you questions about what they're expecting, and they're asking you questions to see how you might fit into that job dynamic. And of course, whenever you're working with people, they'll ask you if you finished a project that is important that needs to get done, or if there's something else going on at work where they need some answers from you, they'll include that as well. And of course, if you are working with clients, especially when in media specifically, when we start talking about things like advertising, you want to understand your client's perspective in addition to your overall audience perspective. So you're writing a media piece and you need to interview someone. Well, again, whenever we are talking about interviewing, you, as the person asking the questions, you're the interviewer, and the person you interview is called the interviewee. Now, when you're picking someone, you want them to have either a personal or a professional relationship to your topic. When we're looking at a professional understanding, this is someone who works with that subject matter. Maybe it's their field of study if they're a professor or someone. Or if they have a personal relationship with it, it could be someone who's affected by a particular topic, or it could be someone who knows, who has like a close friend or a family member who is affected by the event or the law change or something that you are discussing in your story. Now, when you're looking for someone to interview, think about accessibility. Think about people that you know, friends, family members, even acquaintances, like people you see every day at CC's or people you see every day in a particular store or something. And see if they have, if they might be a good fit for your particular topic. So see how they fit into your research and stuff. And of course, when you're looking for someone, make sure that you want to contact them as soon as you can using a phone to call them or text them, email them, or you can meet in person and ask someone questions. Now, whenever you're looking for people, well, looking for someone who has a relationship to you is important. You can also look for people specifically related to your topic that you may not have spoken to before. So try looking outside your comfort zone, see what people are available to you, and use those people to help fill in the gaps in your information. Now, remember when you are conducting interviews, it is important to have more than enough information. This is a spot where preparation equals success. And it's better for you to have too many interviews or too much information and then winnow it down to a small piece of information that you're going to use in your story, or maybe you'll spread it out over a couple of stories or versus not asking enough questions or not having enough interviews and then you're last minute trying to get some information. And of course, before you conduct your interview, you do need to research your topic and also consider the new, now, next mindset. Remember that mindset is something that comes up, especially when we're talking about broadcasting, where we want to know what's happening right now, what is the current information, and also what is the new information in the story. What are we adding to this? And what is your interviewee adding to to your topic? What are they providing that you couldn't get from someone else? So think about that when you're developing your questions and you're getting your answers from people, and that will help you to have a successful interview. So, what do you think of when you hear the word interview? And also think about some of the broadcasts you've heard recently, whether it's a podcast or a traditional radio news event story, and think about how those interviews were used. Who was interviewed? Why were they interviewed? What it was going on in that particular situation? Now, an important part of conducting an interview is pre interview research. And whenever you are conducting that research, you want to both look at your topic and your interviewee. And you can do a web browser search on different topics, information, but make sure if you're doing that, that you're clicking through the link, you're checking your source reliability, and also, when you're looking at things, you can check local, national, international news sites, physical newspapers, magazines, that kind of thing. And you can also check company websites for press releases, for news releases about that topic or that person. And also look at blogs and other website information that can be useful to you. Now, whenever you're looking up company information or maybe a trending topic somewhere, you can also look at social media pages, see what's available on there. Just again, make sure that your source is reliable and something that you can trust. And of course, if you're including something where some data might be relevant, then include that peer review journal article in there as well. Now, where can you find some of this information? Well, of course, there's the internet. We also have a very large supply of items at the UL library. You have tons of books, ebooks, magazines, newspapers, peer reviewed journals, all that good stuff. We also have a lot of local and national government websites available. Some of them are primarily on social media. That's tends to be the case more for smaller local governments, like towns tend to gravitate toward those like more or less free media items. um, but when you're looking at websites, they're usually going to end in .gov or .edu, or if it's a .com site, they will have some kind of acknowledgement or something in the about page explaining that yes, they are an official part of the whatever government group. And of course, whenever you're looking up your information, you want to review your publication dates and sources, see when was it published, is it recent? Remember, recent can vary a little bit, but of course, if it's a developing story, then it might be an update that's happened in the past few hours. If we're talking about newspapers, usually if it's happened in the past few days or the past week, it's probably the most recent information. If we're getting into years, though, that's where we start seeing something that's a bit too old. And of course, when you're gathering information, see if it's actually relevant to your story. It could be something that is related to your topic, but it might not relate to the story that you're writing. So include check which pieces of information relate to your story and use those to help you develop your questions and look for those primary and secondary sources. So, scenario, you're writing a story about the new CC's Coffee CEO. Where might you find more information about this person and why they were hired? Well, of course, some of those places might include the company website if they have a press release, or maybe they have an about page with that person's information, the place where they used to work, that would be another one. Or if you look on a company's social media page, they might have something about the change there as well. So, pre interview writing, whenever you're doing pre interview writing, we're really outlining what's going to become your story. So, what is your story? Think about your lead and what makes this story newsworthy. Remember fame, oddity, conflict, immediacy, impact. Our audience segmentation, demographics, geographics, psychographics, behaviors. You want to also think about your 5 W's and your 1 H: who, what, when, where, why, how. And think about how the newsworthiness might change if there really isn't a new development in your story. So, it could be that you have a story that does have a high level of news value, but maybe at the moment you don't have an update to give your audience. So instead of writing a story right now, maybe you'll check, or maybe you'll use your interview to help you find a new lead and some more information to give your audience about this story. And of course, whenever you conduct your interview, um, and you want to allow your interviewee to give you the information that they have. And if it fits into your original outline the way you expected, great. If not, that's okay. Go, um, you can still go in there and and use it to help you rewrite your lead and improve upon the information that you already have. So, how do you outline your story? Well, you have a lead, a body, and a tail. And remember that inverted pyramid. So you're going to support your lead with the information that you find and offer your audience explanations throughout the body and kind of wrap everything up in the tail. So collect background information. Look for the documents that you need, maybe social posts or uh, it could be that you have some news articles that interviewed a few other people, and you're going to use that to help you develop your own take on this particular topic. Organize your information based on its importance to the lead, and then ask yourself, what am I missing? What can I do to improve this story? And how can I get that from the people I'm interviewing? So, when you're finding an interview, of course, you want to see what they can add to your story. You don't just want someone giving you the same information that you found on the website, that you found on social media, etc. You want to find someone who can add something to what you already have. So they need some kind of meaningful involvement. This could mean something like a first person account of what happened or another personal connection like that secondary connection if they have a close friend or family member who is involved. It could also be that this person is an authority on the particular subject you are looking into, and or maybe they have that fame element and you want to include them, like if it's a politician or someone who's the organizer for an event or the head of a company that's benefiting from this fundraiser or something, that kind of stuff. You can also include person on the street interviews. So that's where you have the average person giving their insight or their opinion on something. And sometimes with those, you're just getting quick clips from people where they're kind of expressing a view uh, that quite possibly a lot of other people have about this topic as well. So, second scenario, you see a news story about Earth receiving a temporary mini moon. Who might you interview about this story? So, of course, there are organizations who study these phenomena. Um, and you could check with one of those like NASA. You could also talk to a science instructor. Maybe there's a group with the Lafayette Science Museum, for example, who's going to talk about the mini moon and maybe do some demonstrations showing what happens, that kind of thing. Um, you could also ask people on the street, "Hey, have you seen this going around on social media? What do you think about this? Is this something that interests you?" That kind of thing. Now, some interview questions. When you begin your interview, you want to collect information about the person you're interviewing. And this, of course, is important when, especially important if you're doing those person on the street interviews where you want to get their first and last name. Even if it's a planned interview where you're going in, you know who they are, they know who you are, that kind of thing, you still want to start your interview with them saying and spelling their first and last name to make sure there aren't any questions about how to say and spell their name, and also to make sure that you have the correct title and the name of their business or event, and make sure that you have contact information for them in case you need to follow up after the interview. Now, sometimes you might not get that with the person on the street interviews, but mostly for your planned interviews, especially, you want to have 2 or 3 ways to contact them. So that means email, phone numbers, a location like their office where you can stop by and interview them, or if you need to pick up something, you can go there and pick it up, that kind of thing. Now, your interview questions should reflect the main topic. So think about how your interviewee relates to your topic and use that to help you build questions that they can answer. And also include your interviewee's relationship with the topic in your questions to help your audience understand what's going on. And it also helps them to kind of warm up to the interview process. And whenever you're interviewing, you want to include both open ended and close ended questions. Now, open ended questions include detailed answers. This is where you are looking for those extended answers that will provide some either emotional resonance for your audience, like help them to relate to it, or have some kind of emotional context for for them as well. Now, when we talk about close-ended questions, this is where we're looking for yes or no answers. You're gathering specific information from your interviewee and trying to clarify a few things with them before you finish writing your piece. So this is usually again a yes or no kind of question. For example, were you here when the fire started? Um, or it could be something else like, is this ice cream your favorite kind? That kind of thing. Basically, again, yes or no answers. If they decide to include some additional information, that's fine. Give them a little breathing space, especially whenever you're interviewing. You want to allow some silence to be there. Sometimes don't feel awkward if there's a bit of a lull. Give them time to think and come up with an answer. Or if it's something where they are pausing for a bit because they don't really want to answer, I mean, you can let it be awkward for a little bit, and often they'll be the ones uh, to break the silence and answer your questions. Now, your questions again should reflect your research. So think about what you're trying to answer, what you're trying to get out of this, and then write 5 or 6 questions based on how your interviewee relates to the topic and what kinds of additional information you're looking for. And make sure you have a logical flow to your ideas, but you can allow for changes based on your source's answers. And of course, give yourself some room to improvise. If you hear an answer that sounds like it might have a little more to it than what they said, try rephrasing their answer in the form of a question. For example, if you ask, "What do you think about the hospital's new emergency room policy?" and they say, "I hate it," well, you can ask, "Which aspects of the policy do you dislike so strongly?" And you're more likely to get some more information out of them and find out what it is that's going on and maybe more of what your audience wants to know. So you've had your interviewee introduce themselves, you've asked them your questions, and now you want to ask if there are any other important points you missed. There might be something that your audience or that you maybe overlooked, and your interviewee might want to include that information. And also, you can ask your source for recommendations depending on who they are and what kind of topic you're reviewing. They might have some suggestions about specific papers if it's something where you're looking for some more data about your topic, or if there are some other websites they suggest or other people to interview. Now, whatever happens, ensure that they speak more than you do. Remember, your goal is for them to answer your questions, not the other way around. Now, in this class, you're going to record all of your interviews. When it comes to recording interviews, there are different laws based on what state you live in. Louisiana is a one party consent state, and that means that only one person involved in a conversation needs to know about the recording. So, if you and a friend, for example, are talking over lunch, you can technically record them without without telling them about it, and it would not break the law. If we're talking about a two-party consent state, then that's where two or more people, like whoever's involved in the conversation, needs to know about the recording happening. So again, Louisiana, one-party consent state, but it is important as journalists and media professionals to build trust with your audience and to disclose when you are recording them and just let them know, hey, I'm recording you not because I'm going to use it for any evil purposes or anything. It's to make sure that I am accurate when I'm reporting your information and that I can go back and review it and write what you actually said. And of course, the one party consent law does exclude things like voyeurism, so spying on people in private moments without their consent. Now, when you're recording, you can do video or audio recording. Video recording, of course, can happen in person. You can set up your phone nowadays and get a pretty decent recording. You can also Zoom chat with someone or use another video chatting service to and record it that way. You can also do audio recordings. Now, if you're doing a face-to-face interview and you're doing the audio recording, there are lots of apps to help you record on your phone. You can use a little handheld recorder if you feel like it too. Um, or you can record a phone call. If you're recording a phone call, then look up the directions for your specific type of phone. It varies a little bit depending on what kind you have. And also, whenever you are following up interviews, a lot of times an email or a text message is okay. You can, of course, do another video recording or audio recording if you realize that you're missing a lot of information, but avoid using the email or text as your primary interview. So, your interview location, you want to go to your source, make them feel comfortable, and they're more likely to open up. So, go to their home or their office, and sometimes they will also have some things in their home or office that they want to show you that relate to your specific topic. And of course, another interview location possibility is breaking news. If you're covering something and you need to go to the scene, then you want to get the information for the people you're interviewing while you're there, so you can follow up in another location. This is one where the follow up interview might again be a recording in like either in someone's home or maybe in a news studio, something like that. Now, writing from an interview, you need to fill in the gaps. So, whenever you're writing from your interview, you should have your outline already and you've figured out how your interview changes or relates to your main topic, your main ideas. And So you want to go through your interview and find pieces of information that are important to your audience. Now, this means looking for ways to clarify information, so make things clearer for your audience. That could be through direct or indirect quotes. So, paraphrasing information sometimes for your audience, or maybe your interview included some of your specific foci related elements, so maybe they have more insight into a conflict that's happening, or maybe they can explain why this bizarre event or seemingly bizarre event isn't really that bizarre. Or you could, they might have information about your who, what, when, where, why, or how. Now, whenever you're deciding whether something should be a direct quote or an indirect or paraphrased piece of information, um, think about which pieces sound interesting to you and about if there's any kind of emotional relevance or something that maybe your audience, it'll help your audience understand it better hearing it in your interviewee's own words. So here's an example where an indirect or paraphrased piece of information was used right before a direct quote. And it actually is used this way. If you look in the lecture notes, I do have a copy um, of the article right here, so you can see how it's used inside the article. So the paraphrased information reads, "These short-lived mini moons are likely more common than we realize," said Richard Binzel, an astronomer at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And the last known one was detected in 2020. Now, the direct quote begins, "This happens with some frequency, but we rarely see them because they're very small and very hard to detect," he said. "Only recently has our survey capability reached the point of spotting them routinely." So he's his direct quote gives a little more information related to what was in the paraphrased information before that and leads into it. You can see that we have his information, like his name and where he works. And there's another piece in the article where they say like, yeah, he isn't technically part of the team, but he, you know, does similar research. Now, again, when you're debating, should I use a direct quote or an indirect quote? Here are some reasons that you would use an indirect quote or paraphrased information to introduce an interviewee. So, introducing them into the article, explaining how they relate to the topic. Also, summarizing information. Maybe they had a really long quote. Now, a long quote in this case, if it's longer than a medium sized sentence, it's probably too long and you need to summarize it. So, you want to summarize information, or you could, um, if it's a really long piece of information, you might include a section of it as a direct quote and the rest of it paraphrased. And also, you want to paraphrase things I whenever you need to write without using jargon. So if they're using a lot of technical terms, then maybe have them explain it when you're interviewing them so you understand what they're talking about, and then that way you can rewrite what they're saying or part of what they said. Even if you were to leave in a jargon reference in there, you can provide some summarized information along with it, explaining what it is this person is actually saying. And then you also can use paraphrased information to transition between ideas or between sources. So if you maybe have a press release and you also have um, a quote, or you have a lot of information from an interview, then you can transition into or out of the press release information by paraphrasing part of the interview. Now, reasons to include direct quotes. Of course, this allows your audience to hear the interviewee in their own words, and often that can be much more compelling, especially if it's on a very divisive topic or something that is better understood in a professional's own words, or in the case of personal anecdotes, if we're hearing a story from someone who lived through a particular experience, then you usually want to hear some of what they have to say in their own words. And this can also include an emotional statement. So if they're talking about how grateful they are to the community for helping them or something like that, then you might include it as a direct quote in there. And also, just if it's a direct quote, sometimes it you want to use it because this person provided a somewhat brief but very excellent explanation of what's going on. Okay, so that's it for interviewing. Go ahead and complete writing project 3, the interview. Um, I will pull up the interview information and go over it briefly. Okay, so writing project 3, I did go over this with all of you, but I'll go over it again so you can have a recording of what's going on. So writing project 3, you're selecting a topic, and this can be any topic. If it's hard for you to think of a topic right away, maybe start by thinking about some people that you might interview about things you're interested in. Like if you're interested in sports, or if you're interested in cooking, or something like that. Um, if think about the people you know who are professionals in their particular industry, and that's a good place to get started, and it can help you to decide on a topic. Now, whenever you are considering someone to interview and a topic, remember to keep your audience in mind. Think about whether or how it falls into the ideas of fame, oddity, conflict, immediacy, and impact, or how it relates to people depending on their demographic, geographic, psychographics, or behaviors. And that will help you to narrow your focus and find a specific idea that you'll be able to write about later. So, find a professional to interview about your topic. Look for someone you can use in a writing project later, and make sure that, again, you have their contact information. And as I mentioned before, when you're preparing for interviews, contact multiple people. Don't just contact one person and wait a whole week for them to get back to you. Contact 3 or 4 people and see if any of them get back to you. And if you don't hear from someone in a couple of days, contact some more people. Or if you have to, maybe change your story idea and contact other people that you know in order to help you finish your story by your deadline. So, and finish in this case, the interview by the deadline. So, write your interview questions. Start with the introductory questions we talked about, and then include 5 or more questions related to your topic. And of course, you need to interview your professional person. During the interview, you are recording your interview. This can be audio or video, and you are going to either upload a copy to YouTube or Vimeo using the unlisted feature for that. So if you click on this link, you'll see that I do have a video available to you where I explain how to upload a video, how to do all the stuff that you need to do on here. And then if you don't feel comfortable uploading it on YouTube, you can send it to me through WeTransfer. It's an organization that allows people to send larger files, so video files and stuff. And you have to look at these ads and whatever, which sometimes are kind of cool, honestly. But you would email it to someone, and you can see, so it expires after 3 days whenever you send it to someone. So you would email it to me, um, to the to work email. So make sure that you send it to the emily.montagnier@louisiana.edu address. So you can do either of those things. And then the Word document, you're turning it on Moodle. It needs to have your notes, questions, an interview link, and your references. Because remember, we're supposed to look up references related to our topic to help us make better questions and ask better questions. So let's look at the example. I do have that little header right here. So your name, your section, and this is Writing Project 3, the interview. And I have yesterday's date on here. Of course, you can write the day that you're turning it in, October 6th. And I have my topic information. So very briefly explain what your topic is. 1 or 2 sentences is fine. We have the FDA update on the opioid crisis, and here are my couple of sentences about it and explaining why I include the references that I have, basically. And then I have my interviewee information. And as I mentioned in class, if you're looking for information for the person you are interviewing, you want to include them in here, then you can always go to the About page for their whatever their business is, or to their social media page if that works instead. So if we look here, here's a spot that says About Dr. Cobb, and we can click there and we see we have the people in her practice, and some other information. And of course, I included a brief summary here as well about the person I'm interviewing and why I'm interviewing them. And then I have some interview questions. So these are questions that I am asking this person. I might ask more questions depending on what kinds of answers they give me, but you can see where it is right here. And then, of course, as you're either listening to your recording or during the interview, if you want to take notes, you can add your notes right there. Um, and then we do have the interview link as well. So if you click on it, you can see an example interview. So I do have the example interview right there. Uh, and this was the complete interview, like talking to this person while we were kind of warming up before actually asking the interview questions. So uh, whenever you're including your interview information. At minimum, I should hear the all of the responses to your interview questions here. If there are a few other things included in there, like if you aren't able to edit out the beginning or the end or something, then that's totally fine. Just have a link to it there, and then you want to include the US in this case. So I was writing about a press release from the FDA, and also I included some information about an organization mentioned in the press release, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And so I have that page on here as well. And here's the press release. And then there was an additional piece of information that came up during the interview. So I included that link here as well. So again, whenever you turn in your work, you are including your notes, so your topic information, your interviewee information, the questions that you ask them, and just a brief piece of information about like what they said whenever in response to your questions. Again, we're doing this because it will help you whenever you are looking to include direct and indirect quotes in your article. So, and then we have our interview link and all of our references. I will be available through email. Email me if you have a question. Otherwise, I will see you on Monday.